She left him a handwritten poem the morning he disappeared. He never read it. Until 3 years later, when he finally learned her name. "You don't look like the type to stay late at charity galas," he had said, leaning against the rooftop railing with a glass of bourbon that cost more than most people's rent. The Atlanta skyline stretched behind him like scattered diamonds on black velvet, and she'd laughed. Not the polite kind of laugh women give men like him, but something real. "Neither do you," she'd replied, and that was how it started. No names, no numbers, just two people who didn't want to be whoever they were supposed to be for one single night. Have you ever loved someone before you even knew their name? Have you ever felt your whole life shift on an axis you didn't know existed, all because someone looked at you like you were the only real thing in a room full of expensive illusions? That's what happened to Nalia Green that September night on the rooftop of the Peachtree Grand. She was there because her friend Simone worked catering and snuck her in through the kitchen. He was there because he owned half the building and couldn't figure out how to leave his own event. They talked about everything except what mattered. She told him about growing up in East Atlanta, about her grandmother Glenna, who raised her on sweet tea, and stubbornness, about how she wanted to open a flower shop one day that sold poetry with every bouquet. He told her about feeling like a ghost in his own life, about building things that mattered, to everyone except himself, about how money was the loneliest currency in the world. They didn't exchange business cards, didn't talk about what they did for work, didn't pull out phones to prove they were important. They just were. Around midnight, he'd traced the edge of her jaw with his thumb and asked, "What if we just stayed here? What if morning never came?" She'd kissed him instead of answering, and the world went quiet in that way it does when everything else stops mattering. The hotel room was 17 floors up. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white sheets that probably cost more than her car payment. She remembers the way the city lights made patterns on his skin, the way he whispered her name like a prayer even though he didn't know her last name. Didn't know where she lived, didn't know she'd been saving pennies in a jar labeled Vine and Verse for 2 years. He left before she could ask his name. "Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story." She woke up to cold sheets and silence. No note, no number scribbled on hotel stationery, just the ghost of cologne on the pillow and the worst kind of emptiness, the kind that proves you were right to never believe in fairy tales in the first place. But Nalia wasn't the type to cry over men who disappeared. Her grandmother hadn't raised her that way, so she got dressed, finger-combed her braids, and did something she'd never done before in her entire life. She wrote him a poem, not on her phone, not typed. She found hotel stationery in the desk drawer and wrote it by hand, her cursive looping and uneven because her hands were shaking. She didn't sign it, didn't leave her number, just folded it once and left it on the pillow where his head had been. Then she walked out and promised herself she'd never think about him again. But fate doesn't forget what you plant. 3 months later, Nalia Green stood in her grandmother's bathroom at 6 in the morning, staring at 2 pink lines that rewrote her entire future. Her hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the test. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps that didn't feel like breathing at all. She didn't cry. She sat on the edge of the bathtub for 20 minutes, watching the sun come up through the frosted window, and felt something settle in her chest. Not fear, not panic. Something quieter, something that felt almost like certainty. Her grandmother found her there an hour later, still holding the test, still staring at nothing. Glenna Green was 72 years old and had buried 2 husbands, raised 3 children, and survived more heartbreak than most people could imagine. She took one look at her granddaughter's face and knew. She didn't ask who, didn't ask why, didn't lecture or shame or judge. She just sat down next to Nalia on that bathtub edge, took her hand and said, "Well, baby, looks like you're about to learn what kind of woman you really are." Nalia chose to keep the baby before she even knew if it was a boy or a girl. She chose it before she calculated the cost of diapers or figured out how she'd afford prenatal care. She chose it the same way she'd chosen to write that poem, because some things aren't decisions. They're just truth. She never tried to find him, never hired a private investigator or scrolled through social media or asked around at the gala. What would she even say? "I'm looking for a man with dark eyes and expensive taste who told me beautiful lies on a rooftop." Atlanta was full of men like that. Besides, he'd made his choice when he left without a word. She'd make hers by staying. The pregnancy was hard, not because of complications, but because Nalia worked 2 jobs, one at a bookstore. one doing floral arrangements for weddings, and couldn't afford to slow down. She worked until her feet swelled, worked until her back ached, worked until Glenna physically took the scissors out of her hand and told her to sit down before she hurt herself and the baby. She gave birth on a Tuesday in May. No father in the waiting room, just Glenna, holding her hand and whispering the same things she'd whispered when. Nalaya was a little girl with scraped knees. "You're stronger than you know, baby. You're stronger than you know." She named him Revi, short for Reverie, because that's what his father had been, a beautiful dream she'd woken up from too soon. And when the nurse placed that tiny, wrinkled, perfect baby in her arms, Nalaya looked into his eyes and felt her heart crack open in a way she didn't know was possible. He had his father's eyes, dark, deep, the kind that looked like they were holding secrets even when they were just staring at the ceiling. But he had her nose, her chin, her stubborn little mouth that was already trying to latch onto anything it could find. "You're mine," she whispered to him in that hospital room, tears streaming down her face for the first time since that morning in the hotel. "You're all mine, and I'm never letting you go." She kept that promise. For 3 years, Nalaya built a life that didn't need anyone's approval. She opened Vine and Verse in a corner spot on Auburn Avenue, a tiny flower shop with chalkboard walls where she wrote poetry next to the price tags. Roses came with Rumi. Sunflowers came with Mary Oliver. Every bouquet had a story. The shop barely broke even most months, but it was hers. Revi grew up in that shop. He took his first steps between the flower buckets, learned his colors from the blooms, called the customers friends before he even knew what the word meant. He was a quiet kid, thoughtful, the kind of 3-year-old who stared at butterflies like they were miracles and asked questions that didn't have easy answers. "Why do flowers die, Mama?" "So new ones can grow, baby." "Where's my daddy?" That one was harder. Nalaya never lied to him, never said his father was dead or away or coming back someday. She just knelt down, looked him in those dark, familiar eyes and said, "Your daddy doesn't know about you yet, but you have me, and you have Gigi, and we're enough." Most days, that answer satisfied him. Some days, it broke her heart, but she never regretted her choice. Not once, not even when the rent was late or the utilities got shut off or she had to choose between fixing the shop's leaking roof and buying Revi new shoes. She rebuilt everything with roots and love. Then came the invitation. It arrived on a Thursday afternoon in late August, 3 years and 2 months after that night on the rooftop. Heavy cardstock, gold embossing, the kind of invitation that screamed money before you even opened it. Glenna brought it into the shop during the lunch rush, waving it like a fan. "Child, you got mail from some fancy people." Nalaya barely glanced at it. She was elbow deep in a wedding order, 200 white roses that needed to be wrapped by 5. Probably junk mail. Glenna opened it anyway because that's what grandmothers do. Then her eyebrows shot up. "Baby, this is an invitation to the Aeon Path Charity Gala. Says here they want you to do the floral installations for their annual fundraiser." Nalaya's hands stilled. Aeon Path. She knew that name. Everyone in Atlanta knew that name. It was the AI tech company that had put the city on the map, the one that made headlines every other week for some innovation or acquisition or controversy. And they wanted her. "They're offering $15,000, Glenna added, reading further. "For one night of flowers. $15,000. That was 3 months of rent. That was Revi's preschool tuition for a year. That was the difference between surviving and actually living." Nalaya wiped her hands on her apron and took the invitation. "I don't do corporate events," she said, but her voice didn't sound convincing even to herself. Glenna just looked at her, the kind of look that said, "Child, don't be prideful when your bills are due." So Nalaya said yes. She said yes to the money, yes to the exposure, yes to one night of pretending she belonged in rooms with people who probably spent more on shoes than she made in a month. She had no idea it was his event, no idea that the man who'd left her in that hotel room 3 years ago was the CEO hosting the gala, no idea that accepting this invitation would unravel everything she'd carefully rebuilt. She left him a handwritten poem. He never read it, until years later. If you were in her shoes, would you have said yes to that gala or kept your distance? Drop a comment below. Revi was burning up. Nalaya pressed her palm against her son's forehead at 2 a.m. and felt panic claw up her throat. The thermometer read 103.7. His little body was shaking under the blanket, his breath coming in short gasps that sounded wrong. "Mama," he whimpered, his voice small and scared in the darkness. "Mama, I'm cold." She wrapped him in every blanket she could find, but he kept shivering, kept crying, kept asking for something she couldn't give him. Glenna drove them to the emergency room in her old Toyota, going 20 over the speed limit the whole way. Nalaya sat in the back holding Revi against her chest, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "You're okay, baby. You're going to be okay." The hospital was bright and cold and smelled like disinfectant. They waited for 3 hours in plastic chairs while Revi drifted in and out of sleep against her shoulder. No insurance meant they went to the back of the line. No father on the paperwork meant nurses looked at her with that specific kind of pity that made her want to scream. It was just a bad flu. They gave him medicine and fluids and sent them home with a bill that made Nalaya's stomach drop. $800. For one night. For basic care. She paid it in installments over 6 months. That night changed something in her. Made her realize that love wasn't enough if she couldn't afford to keep him healthy. Made her understand that pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. So, she worked harder. She took on every wedding, every funeral, every last-minute order that came through the shop. She stayed up until midnight making arrangements, then woke up at 5 to open. She turned down dates, turned down friends, turned down anything that wasn't Revi or the shop or survival. Vine and verse became her cathedral, the place where she poured everything she couldn't say out loud into stems and petals and handwritten quotes on brown paper. People started to notice. The shop got written up in a local magazine, then a lifestyle blog. Then someone with a big Instagram following posted a picture of one of her arrangements, with the caption, "This is what love looks like when you can hold it." Orders picked up. Not enough to get rich, but enough to breathe a little easier. Enough to buy Revi new shoes without checking her bank account first. Enough to start believing that maybe, just maybe, she'd actually pulled this off. She built a community without meaning to. The shop became a gathering place for people who needed beauty on their worst days. Women came in crying and left smiling. Men came in awkward and left with confidence. Kids came in curious and left with flowers tucked behind their ears. Revi was the shop's mascot. He'd greet customers at the door with his gap-toothed smile and ask them what their favorite color was. He'd help Nalaya tie ribbons, his little fingers clumsy but determined. He'd fall asleep in the back room on a pile of flower boxes, dreaming whatever 3-year-olds dream about. He looked more like his father every day. Same dark eyes that saw too much. Same quiet way of watching the world like he was trying to solve it. Same habit of tilting his head when he was thinking hard about something. Sometimes Nalaya would catch herself staring at him and wondering if his father ever thought about that night. Wondering if somewhere in this city, a man she'd never see again was. Living his life without knowing he'd created something perfect. She never let herself wonder too long. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning. Revi was at preschool. Nalaya was restocking the cooler when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. "Miss Green? This is Victoria Chen from Aeon Path. We met briefly at the planning meeting last week." Nalaya remembered. Victoria was the event coordinator. Sharp suit, sharper smile, the kind of woman who probably had her whole life color-coded in a planner. "Hi. Yes. Is everything okay with the order?" "Everything's perfect. Actually, I'm calling because we have an additional opportunity. One of our major clients saw your work at our spring fundraiser and wants to book you for a private event. The budget is substantial." "How substantial?" $20,000. For floral design at a wedding anniversary party. 3 weeks from now. Nalaya's hand tightened on the phone. $20,000. That was enough to fix the shop's roof. Enough to put real money in savings. Enough to stop living paycheck to paycheck. But something felt off. "Victoria, can I ask, why me? There are bigger florists in Atlanta, ones with whole teams." There was a pause. Then Victoria's voice came back, careful. "The client specifically requested you, said they admired your work, that your arrangements tell stories." Nalaya felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Who's the client?" "I'm not at liberty to say until you sign the contract. Confidentiality clause. But I can tell you it's a very prominent family." She should have asked more questions. Should have pushed harder. But $20,000 was $20,000, and Revi needed new clothes in the preschool. Tuition was due and the shop's refrigerator was making a noise that probably meant it was dying. "Send me the contract," she said. 3 days later, she almost said no. The contract arrived with a note attached. The event was the Aeon Path Anniversary Gala. Black tie, 600 guests. In the same building where she'd met him 3 years ago. Nalaya stared at the note for a long time. Her hands were shaking. Glenna found her sitting at the kitchen table at midnight, the contract spread out in front of her, untouched. "What's wrong, baby?" "I can't do it," Nalaya whispered. "I can't go back there." Glenna sat down across from her. "Back where?" "To where it happened. To where I met Revi's father." "It's the same place, Mama. The same building." Glenna was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and took Nalaya's hand. "Baby, you think that man's going to remember one night from 3 years ago? You think men like that remember every woman they spend time with?" It hurt to hear, but it was probably true. "And even if he is there," Glenna continued, "so what? You're not the same girl you were that night. You're a mother, a business owner, a woman who rebuilt her whole life from nothing. You walk in there with your head up, do your job, take their money, and leave. Simple." Nalaya wanted to believe it was that simple. She signed the contract. The week before the gala, she barely slept. She designed arrangements that were equal parts beautiful and angry, tight buds that would bloom at midnight, dark flowers with edges like knives, greens so deep they looked black in certain light. She poured 3 years of silence into those flowers. Revi noticed. He always noticed. "Mama, why do you look sad?" She picked him up, held him close, breathed in the smell of his hair. "I'm not sad, baby. Just thinking." "About what?" "About how lucky I am." He hugged her tighter. "I'm lucky too." The morning of the gala, Nalaya dropped Revi at preschool and kissed his forehead 3 times. Once for "I love you." Once for "be good." Once for "please don't let anything happen while I'm gone." He waved at her through the window, his little hand pressed against the glass. She drove to the Peachtree Grand with her stomach in knots. The ballroom looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, less magical. She spent 8 hours setting up, climbing ladders, wiring garlands, placing centerpieces with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She didn't see him, didn't hear his voice, didn't catch even a glimpse of the man who'd turned her life upside down. By 6 o'clock, the room was transformed. Every surface dripped with blooms. The ceiling looked like a garden growing upside down. The bar was wrapped in vines that spelled out words in a language only Nalaya understood. Victoria walked through with her clipboard, nodding approval. "This is stunning. Absolutely stunning. The client is going to be thrilled." Nalaya just wanted to leave. She was packing up her supplies when Victoria appeared again, this time with a strange look on her face. "Miss Green, there's been a change of plans. The client would like you to stay for the event. They want the designer present in case any adjustments are needed." Nalaya's heart dropped. "I don't have anything to wear." Victoria smiled. "That's been handled. There's a dress waiting for you in the executive suite. Shoes, too. Everything you need." It felt like a trap. But she couldn't say no. Not without losing the contract. Not without losing $20,000. So she went upstairs to the executive suite and found a dress hanging in the closet. Simple, elegant, black silk that fit like it had been made for her. Which it probably had been. She put it on, did her makeup in the mirror, looked at herself, and barely recognized the woman staring back. "This isn't me," she whispered to her reflection. But she went downstairs anyway. The gala was everything she remembered, and worse. Rich people in expensive clothes, talking about money like it was a game. She stood near the back, trying to be invisible, waiting for her chance to leave. Then the lights dimmed, a spotlight hit the stage, and a man walked out to give the opening speech. Nalaya's breath stopped. It was him, 3 years older, same dark eyes, same presence that made the whole room lean forward. Kellen Aeon Cross, CEO of Aeon Path, the man whose company name was on every building downtown, the man who'd probably forgotten her name 5 minutes after leaving that hotel room, the man who didn't know he had a son. She says yes to the gala for financial reasons, unaware it's his event. Comment below if you think she should have stayed or left the moment she saw him. He saw her in the middle of his speech and forgot his own name for 3 full seconds. Kellen Aeon Cross didn't stumble during speeches. He delivered presentations to the UN, pitched billion-dollar acquisitions. To skeptical boards, given TED Talks that got millions of views. He was known for being unshakable, calm, controlled, but then his eyes caught on a woman standing near the back wall in a black dress, and every word in his prepared speech evaporated. He knew that face. Knew it the way you know songs you haven't heard in years, instantly, completely, with a punch of recognition that felt like falling. 3 years. He'd spent 3 years trying to forget that night, and here she was, looking at him like he was a stranger. His assistant, Marcus, noticed the pause, cleared his throat quietly from the side of the stage. Kellen blinked, found his place in the speech, kept going, but his heart was hammering. After the speech, he couldn't find her. She'd vanished into the crowd like smoke. He spent 20 minutes searching, making excuses to walk through different sections of the ballroom, scanning faces, looking for black silk and eyes that had haunted him for 3 years. Marcus found him near the bar, looking distracted. "Sir, the investors from Singapore are waiting. Tell them 5 minutes. You said that 10 minutes ago." Kellen didn't care. He kept searching. He finally spotted her near the floral installation she'd designed, because of course she'd designed it. Of course, she was the mysterious florist Victoria had been raving about for weeks. She was adjusting a stem that had come loose, her back to the crowd, her shoulders tense. He walked over before he could talk himself out of it. "These are beautiful." She went completely still, didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge him. "Thank you," she said, her voice flat. "I mean it. They're unlike anything I've ever seen. They almost look alive." She finally turned to face him, and the look in her eyes could have cut glass. "That's because they are alive, Mr. Cross. That's how flowers work." The formality stung worse than the sarcasm. "Do I know you?" He asked it even though he knew the answer, needed to hear her say it. Her laugh was bitter. "Do you know me?" "No, I don't think you do." She started to walk away. He caught her elbow gently, and she froze. "Wait, please, She pulled her arm free. "It was one night, 3 years ago. Let it stay that way." Then she disappeared into the crowd, and this time he let her go. But his mind was racing. 3 years ago, same timeline, same place, and she was looking at him like he'd committed a crime he didn't remember committing. He found Marcus. "I need you to pull the vendor files. The florist. I need her name and contact information." "Sir, we have the Singapore meeting now, Marcus." 20 minutes later, Kellen was alone in his office on the 40th floor, staring at a file that contained more answers and more questions. Nalea Green, owner of Vine and Verse, 28 years old, no husband listed, one dependent. His hands were shaking. He told himself it didn't mean anything. Lots of people had dependents. Could be a parent, a sibling, anyone. But something in his chest knew. He found the shop's address, Auburn Avenue. He could be there in 20 minutes. He was there in 15. Vine and Verse was closed, but lights were on in the back. He could see shadows moving behind the frosted glass. He knocked once, twice. The door opened, and an older woman appeared, 70-something, silver hair, eyes sharp as knives. "We're closed," she said. "I'm looking for Nalea Green." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Who's asking?" "Kellen Aon Cross." Something flickered across her face. Recognition, anger, something else he couldn't name. "She's not here." "When will she be back?" "Don't know. Don't care. Now get off my granddaughter's property before I call the cops." She started to close the door. Kellen put his hand against it, not forcing, just stopping. "Please, I just need to talk to her. Just 5 minutes." The older woman, Nalea's grandmother apparently, looked him up and down slowly. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed, not a happy laugh. A sad, knowing laugh that made his stomach turn. "You want 5 minutes? She had you for a whole night, and you couldn't even leave a note. So no, Mr. Cross. You don't get 5 minutes. You don't get 5 seconds. You get to leave." She shut the door in his face. Kellen stood there for a long moment, staring at the dark wood, feeling like he'd been punched. He left, but he came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Every time the shop was closed. Every time the lights were on in the back. Every time no one answered his knock. On the 4th day, he left a single rose on the doorstep with a note, I remember. "I'm sorry. Please let me explain." The rose was gone the next morning, but there was no response. On the 7th day, he showed up at 6 in the morning and waited across the street. Watched the shop. Watched the door. At 7:30, he saw her. She was carrying a toddler on her hip, a little boy with dark curly hair and a backpack shaped like a dinosaur. The kid was chattering away, and she was smiling, kissing his forehead, setting him down so he could walk the last few steps to the shop door. Kellen's entire world tilted sideways. The boy had his eyes, his exact eyes, dark and deep and unmistakable. He crossed the street without thinking, without planning, without any idea what he was going to say. Nalia saw him coming and instinctively pulled the boy behind her. "Leave," she said. Her voice was shaking. "Just leave." "Is he mine?" The question hung in the air like a grenade. Nalia's jaw tightened. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "You don't get to ask me that. You don't get to show up 3 years later and, is he mine?" Kellen asked again, softer this time. The little boy peeked out from behind his mother's legs. He looked up at Kellen with those familiar eyes, curious, cautious, completely unafraid. "Mama, who's that?" Nalia's voice cracked. "No one, baby. Just someone leaving." But Kellen wasn't leaving. He crouched down slowly, carefully, until he was eye level with the boy. "Aye," he said. His voice was shaking. "What's your name?" The boy looked at his mother, then back at Kellen. "Revi. That's a cool name. How old are you, Revi?" 3. The boy held up 3 fingers proudly. Kellen felt like he couldn't breathe. 3 years old. Dark eyes, looking at him like he was staring into a mirror. He stood up slowly, looked at Nalia. Her face was a storm of emotions, anger, fear, something that looked almost like grief. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her laugh was sharp and painful. "Tell you? How? You didn't leave a number. Didn't leave a name. You disappeared like I was nothing. I didn't know your name either. I looked for you. After that night, I came back to the hotel. Asked everyone. No one knew who you were." She shook her head. Don't try to make this into some romantic tragedy. You left. That was your choice." Revi tugged on his mother's hand. "Mama, I'm hungry." Nalia's whole body softened. She picked him up, held him close. "I know, baby. Let's get you inside." She unlocked the shop door with one hand, balancing Revi on her hip with the other. She didn't look back at Kellen. Didn't say goodbye, but she didn't close the door completely either. Kellen stood there for a long time staring at that half-open door. Then he heard Nalia's voice from inside, quiet but clear. "You disappeared, but I raised what you left behind. If you were in her shoes, would you speak? Or walk away? Drop your answer in the comments below." Kellen didn't sleep for 3 days. He kept seeing those eyes. Revi's eyes, his eyes, looking up at him with innocent curiosity, not knowing he was looking at the man who should have been there from the beginning. His entire executive team noticed. He snapped at people who didn't deserve it, canceled meetings, stood at his office window for hours, staring at nothing. Marcus finally asked the question everyone was thinking. "Sir, are you all right?" "No," Kellen said. "I'm not." He went back to Vine and Verse on a Thursday afternoon with a single rose and no plan. Just the desperate need to fix something he'd broken without knowing it was breakable. The shop was open this time. A bell chimed when he walked in. The space was small but warm, exposed brick walls covered in chalk poetry, mason jars full of wildflowers, the smell of soil and petals and something that reminded him of that night 3 years ago. Nalia was behind the counter, wrapping a bouquet. She looked up when the bell rang, and her whole body went rigid. "We're about to close. I'll be quick." He set the rose on the counter between them. She stared at it like it might explode. "What do you want, Mr. Cross?" "To talk. To apologize. To what? Make yourself feel better?" She tied off the bouquet with more force than necessary. "Because that's what this is, right? Rich guy feels guilty, shows up with a flower, thinks everything's forgiven. That's not what this is. Then what is it?" She looked at him, and the pain in her eyes made him want to break something. Made him want to go back 3 years and shake himself awake before he'd walked out of that hotel room. "I want to know my son," he said quietly. Nalia's hands stilled. "Now you want to know him. Now, after 3 years of him asking where his daddy is, after 3 years of me explaining why we're alone, after 3 years of building a life that didn't include you. I didn't know. And whose fault is that? The question hit like a fist. She was right. It was his fault. His choice to leave without a name or number. His choice to play mysterious. His choice to treat that night like something that would disappear with the sunrise. Mine, he said. It's my fault. All of it. And I can't fix that. But I can show up now. I can try. Nalaya laughed bitterly. Try? You think showing up makes you a father? You think bringing roses makes up for missed birthdays and night terrors? And every time he asked me why other kids have daddies and he doesn't, Kellen felt like he was drowning. What do you want me to do? Tell me. I'll do anything. I want you to leave. The words were quiet but final. He should have listened, should have respected her boundaries, should have given her space. But then the back door opened, and Revi walked out, followed by Nalaya's grandmother. The boy saw Kellen and lit up. Mama, it's the man from before. Nalaya moved immediately, putting herself between Kellen and her son. Revi, go back with Gigi. But Mama, now. The boy's face crumpled. He turned and ran back toward his great-grandmother, who scooped him up and disappeared into the back room. But not before giving Kellen a look that could have melted steel. Nalaya's hands were shaking. You need to go, right now. I just want to talk to him. 5 minutes. I just want to. You want. She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. What about what he needs? What about protecting him from men who leave? I'm not leaving. The words came out stronger than he meant them. Nalaya stopped, stared at him. I'm not leaving, he said again, quieter. I left once. Biggest mistake of my life. But I'm not doing it again. I want to know him. Want to be part of his life. And I know I have no right to ask, but I'm asking anyway. Nalaya wiped her face roughly. You think you can just decide that? You think you can walk in here and... Yes. He stepped closer. I do. Because he's my son, and I know I don't deserve him. Don't deserve you. But I'm here, and I'm not running this time. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she picked up the rose he'd brought and handed it back to him. Revi's allergic to roses, breaks out in hives. But you wouldn't know that, would you? Because you weren't there when we spent 4 hours in the ER last spring. You weren't there when he couldn't stop itching. You weren't there for any of it. Kellen took the rose, feeling like the world's biggest fool. I want to be there now, he said quietly. For all of it. If you'll let me. Nalaya's laugh was hollow. You think it's that simple? You think I can just let you into his life and trust you won't break his heart the way you broke mine? I won't. You don't know that. No. He looked her straight in the eye. But I'm going to spend every day proving it anyway. She turned away, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. He has your eyes. Every time I look at him, I see you. Do you know what that's like? Loving someone who's half made of the person who hurt you most? Kellen felt something crack in his chest. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I'm so sorry. They stood in silence for a long moment. The shop's clock ticked. Someone walked past the window outside. Finally, Nalaya spoke. If you want to be part of his life, there are rules. You don't just show up whenever. You don't make promises you can't keep. You don't get to be the fun weekend dad while I do the hard work. You show up consistently, or you don't show up at all. Understand? Yes. And you don't tell him yet. Not until I'm sure you're serious. He thinks his daddy doesn't know about him. And that's easier than thinking his daddy knew and didn't care. The distinction broke Kellen's heart, but he nodded. Okay. And if you hurt him, her voice turned to ice. If you hurt my son, there's not enough money in the world to protect you from me. I understand. She finally looked at him again. Her eyes were red but dry now. Determined. You can come to the park Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. Piedmont Park, near the playground. I'll introduce you as a friend. We'll see how it goes. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because my son deserves a chance to know his father, even if his father doesn't deserve him. The words stung, but they were fair. Kellen left the shop with his heart pounding and his mind racing. He had 2 days to figure out how to be a father. 2 days to prepare for the most important meeting of his life. He went straight to a bookstore and bought every parenting book they had. Read them, cover to cover. Made notes, highlighted sections. Tried to cram 3 years of missed knowledge into 48 hours. Marcus found him at midnight in his office surrounded by books with titles, like Connecting with Your Toddler and The Emotionally Available Parent. Sir, maybe you should get some sleep. I can't. Kellen's eyes were bloodshot. I have to figure this out. I have to be ready. You'll be fine. How do you know? Because you care. Marcus picked up one of the books, flipped through it. Most guys in your position would just throw money at the situation. You're reading parenting books at midnight. That's not nothing. It felt like nothing compared to 3 years of missed bedtimes and scraped knees and first words and all the moments he'd never get back. Saturday morning came too fast and not fast enough. Kellen showed up at Piedmont Park at 9:30, wearing jeans and a t-shirt because all the books said to dress casual around kids. He felt ridiculous, like he was cosplaying as a normal person. He found them by the playground at exactly 10 o'clock. Nalaya was pushing Revi on a swing, and the sound of the boys' laughter hit Kellen like a physical thing. He walked over slowly, hands in his pockets, trying to look non-threatening. Nalaya saw him coming and said something to Revi. The boy jumped off the swing and ran over, all energy and excitement. Hi. You came back. Kellen crouched down. Hi, Revi. Yeah, I came back. Is that okay? The boy nodded seriously. Mama says you're her friend. I am. I hope I can be your friend too. Revi considered this. Do you like dinosaurs? I love dinosaurs. What's your favorite? Kellen's mind went blank. He'd read parenting books, but hadn't prepared for dinosaur questions. The T-Rex? Revi's face fell. That's boring. Everyone likes T-Rex. You're right. I'm sorry. What's your favorite? Ankylosaurus. Because they have armor and spiky tails and nobody can hurt them. The answer hit Kellen harder than it should have. A 3-year-old who already understood the need for protection. For armor. For spikes to keep the world away. That's a great choice, Kellen said. Can you teach me more about them? Revi's whole face lit up. Yeah. Come on. He grabbed Kellen's hand, small fingers wrapping around his with complete trust, and dragged him toward the playground. Started talking a mile a minute about dinosaurs and dig sites and fossils. Nalaya watched from a distance, arms crossed, expression unreadable. But she didn't stop them. And for the first time in 3 years, Kellen felt like maybe, just maybe, he could fix what he'd broken. Those eyes. That boy. Comment below if you think Kellen deserves a second chance. Revi had a nightmare on a Tuesday night, and Kellen wasn't there. Nalaya held her son in the dark, rocking him, while he sobbed about monsters and shadows and things he couldn't explain. His little body shook against hers, and she whispered the same things she'd been whispering for 3 years. Mama's here. You're safe. I've got you. But when Revi finally fell back asleep, she sat on the floor of his room with her back against the wall and cried. Because no matter how much she loved him, no matter how hard she tried, sometimes one parent wasn't enough. She didn't tell Kellen about it, didn't text him, didn't call, but somehow he knew. A package arrived at Vine, and verse 3 days later, no note. Just a return address that said Aeon Path Technologies. Inside were 5 books, all about dinosaurs, all about dealing with nightmares and big feelings and scary thoughts. Age-appropriate, beautifully illustrated, with titles like When Shadows Seem Scary and Brave Like a Dinosaur. There was a sticky note on top in handwriting she was starting to recognize. Read these with him before bed. They helped me when I was little. Nalaya stared at that note for a long time, imagining Kellen as a scared kid, imagining him remembering that fear and trying to help Revi through it. That night, she read one of the books to Revi before bed. He fell asleep halfway through, breathing steady, peaceful. She texted Kellen, "Thank you." 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, "How is he?" She almost lied, almost said fine and left it at that. But something stopped her. She wrote, "He had a nightmare Tuesday. I handled it. But the books helped tonight. The response came fast. I should have been there. I'm sorry. You can't be there for every nightmare. I want to try." It was becoming a pattern. Kellen showing up in small ways. Sending books. Dropping off Revi's favorite juice boxes at the shop. Learning the names of all the dinosaurs. Texting Nalaya to ask if there was anything they needed. He didn't push. Didn't demand more time. Just showed up consistently, the way she'd asked him to. Slowly, carefully, Nalaya started letting him in. Saturday mornings at the park became their routine. Kellen would show up at 10 o'clock sharp, Every single week, no matter what. No business trips, no meetings, no excuses. He learned how to push Revy on the swings without going too high. Learned which playground equipment was too scary and which was just right. Learned that Revy got cranky when he was hungry and needed quiet time after too much stimulation. He learned by watching Nalea, by asking questions, by messing up and apologizing and trying again. One Saturday, Revy scraped his knee on the playground, started crying. Kellen's face went white. He looked at Nalea with panic in his eyes, completely lost. She knelt down, inspected the scrape. "It's okay, baby. Just a little scratch. You're so brave. But it hurts," Revy sobbed. "I know. Come here." She pulled a Band-Aid from her purse, because she always had Band-Aids, always had everything Revy might need. She cleaned the scrape with a wipe, applied the Band-Aid, kissed his knee twice. Revy sniffled. "Better, better. Now go play. You're tough like an ankylosaurus, remember?" He ran off, crisis forgotten. Kellen stared at Nalea like she'd performed magic. "How did you do that?" She shrugged. "Practice. 3 years of practice. Teach me." So she did. She taught him about Band-Aids and crackers and the specific way Revy liked his sandwiches cut. She taught him about patience and consistency and showing up even when it was hard. She taught him how to be a father. And slowly, without meaning to, she started teaching him how to be part of their life. Glenna noticed first. She cornered Nalea one evening while Revy was coloring in the back room. "You're softening." "I'm not." Glenna raised an eyebrow. "Baby, I've known you your whole life. You're softening toward that man." "He's trying, Mama. Really trying. Trying doesn't erase 3 years." "I know. But it's something." Glenna sighed. "Just be careful. Men like that, men with money and power, they're used to getting what they want. And when they stop wanting it, they leave. He's not like that." "How do you know?" "Because he shows up. Every Saturday. Every time. No matter what." Glenna didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue. The breakthrough came 6 weeks into their new routine. Kellen arrived at the park with something different, a small notebook and a box of colored pencils. "What's that?" Nalea asked. He looked almost shy. Revy mentioned he likes to draw. Thought maybe we could draw dinosaurs together. Revy lost his mind with excitement. They sat on a park bench for an hour, Kellen following Revy's instructions on how to draw a proper ankylosaurus. "Your tail is wrong," Revy said seriously, pointing at Kellen's drawing. "How's it supposed to look?" "More spiky. Like this." He demonstrated with his own pencil. Kellen redrew it. "Better?" "Perfect." Nalea watched from the swings, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. This was what she'd wanted. What she'd needed. Someone to show up. Someone to try. But it was also terrifying, because the more Kellen showed up, the more Revy loved him, and the more Revy loved him, the more it would destroy them both if he left. That evening, after Kellen had gone home and Revy was in bed, Nalea found herself staring at her phone. She opened her messages with Kellen, typed and deleted 3 different texts. Finally she wrote, "You're good with him." His response came immediately, "He makes it easy." She stared at those words, then typed, "Don't break his heart." The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, "I won't. I promise." "People break promises all the time," she wrote. The response took longer this time, I know. "But I'm not people. And he's not just anyone. He's my son." Nalea put her phone down and cried. Not sad tears, not happy tears. Something in between that she didn't have a name for. The next Saturday, something shifted. Kellen showed up with flowers, not roses, he'd learned his lesson, but a small bouquet of sunflowers and daisies wrapped in brown paper. He handed them to Nalea, not Revy. "These are for you, for giving me a chance." She took them carefully. "You didn't have to." "I know. I wanted to." Revy tugged on Kellen's sleeve. "Can we go to the big slide?" "Absolutely. Race you there?" They took off running, Revy's laughter trailing behind them. Nalea stood holding the flowers, watching this man who'd broken her. Heart play with their son, and felt something crack open inside her. Not forgiveness yet, not trust, but something that looked almost like possibility. That evening she put the flowers in a vase on the counter at Vine and Verse. Glenna saw them and raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. The flowers stayed fresh for 2 weeks. And when they started to wilt, new ones appeared, not delivered by a service, brought by Kellen himself, early Saturday morning before the park. He brought flowers every week after that, different kinds, always with a small card that had a single word written in his handwriting. Week 1, sorry. Week 2, trying. Week 3, patient. Week 4, here. Nalaya kept the cards in a drawer in her desk, didn't tell anyone about them. But sometimes, late at night when the shop was quiet, she'd take them out and read them like a promise she wasn't sure she could trust yet. 3 months into their new routine, Nalaya found Kellen in the park early one Saturday morning. He was sitting on a bench, reading a book, waiting for them to arrive. She sat down next to him. "What are you reading?" He showed her the cover, a poetry collection by Langston Hughes. "Since when do you read poetry?" "Since I found out you write it. Thought maybe I should understand what you love." It was such a small thing, such a simple gesture, but it broke something open in Nalaya that had been closed for 3 years. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. Why did you leave that morning? 3 years ago. Why didn't you at least leave a note?" Kellen closed the book slowly, set it down, stared at his hands. "Because I was a coward. Because that night felt too real, and I didn't know how to handle real. Because I spent my whole life building walls, and you knocked them down in 6 hours, and that terrified me." He looked at her finally. "So I ran, and I've regretted it every day since. Even before I knew about Revi. I regretted leaving you." Nalaya felt tears prick her eyes. "I wrote you a poem that morning. Left it on the pillow." Kellen's breath caught. "What?" "A poem. About that night. About how some people are meant to be remembered, not kept. I left it for you. I never saw it." Kellen's voice cracked. Housekeeping must have thrown it away. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Kellen asked quietly, "Do you remember it? The poem? Every word? Will you tell me?" Nalaya closed her eyes, took a breath, then recited from memory. "Some people are lightning strikes, beautiful, brief, impossible to hold. You were every storm I'd ever chased, condensed into 6 hours of thunder. I don't know your name, but I'll remember your eyes long after I've forgotten my own." When she opened her eyes, Kellen was crying. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I left. I'm so sorry I missed 3 years. I'm so sorry I made you raise him alone." Nalaya didn't touch him, didn't comfort him, just sat there while he cried for everything they'd lost. Finally she spoke. "You can't get those years back, but you can show up for the years ahead." "I will. I promise." "Don't promise. Just do it." Revi appeared then, running up the path with Glenna trailing behind him. "Kellen, Kellen, I brought my dinosaur book. Can you read it?" Kellen wiped his face quickly, smiled. "Absolutely, buddy. Let's read it." He scooped Revi up, carried him toward their favorite bench, already flipping through the book and asking questions. Glenna sat down next to Nalaya. "You told him about the poem. How did you know?" "Because you've been carrying that thing around for 3 years, baby. About time you let it go." Nalaya watched Kellen and Revi reading together. Watched her son's face light up when Kellen did the dinosaur voices. Watched this broken thing they were trying to build. "I'm scared, Mama. I know. What if he leaves again? Then we'll survive, same as we always have. But what if he stays?" Glenna squeezed her hand. "Then you'll have to figure out how to let him." That night, Nalaya found a package on the shop doorstep. Inside was a leather journal, expensive, beautiful, and a note. For new poems, about new beginnings. "If you'll let me be part of them." She sat on the floor of her shop, holding that journal, and let herself cry. For the girl she'd been 3 years ago. For the mother she'd become. For the woman she might be able to be if she could learn to trust again. She opened the journal to the first page and wrote, "Some people are lightning strikes, but some people come back as steady rain, showing up daily, quietly, teaching flowers how to bloom again. Can a man rebuild the family he never knew he had? Like if you believe in redemption." The check was for $4.2 million. Nalaya stared at it, sitting on the counter of vine and verse like a bomb waiting to explode. She'd found it tucked inside an envelope that morning, slipped under the shop door sometime after closing. No note, no explanation, just a check signed by Odette Cross and a business card that said Cross Family Trust. Glenna picked it up, squinted at the numbers. "Baby, is this real?" Nalaya's hands were shaking. I think so. $4 million. That was enough to never worry about money again. Enough to expand the shop, pay for Revi's college, buy a house, live comfortably for the rest of their lives. But it was also a message, and Nalea understood exactly what it meant. The woman showed up an hour later. Odette Cross walked into vine and verse like she owned it, which with $4 million she probably thought she could. She was 60-something, silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a cream suit that probably cost more than Nalea's car. She looked around the shop with barely concealed disgust. Quaint. Can I help you? Nalea kept her voice steady. I'm Odette Cross, Kellen's mother. I assume you received my offer. If you're calling a bribe an offer, then yes. Odette smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Smart girl. Let's not waste each other's time. You cash that check, sign the papers I'll have drawn up, and disappear from my son's life. From my grandson's life. Nalea felt ice in her veins. Excuse me? You heard me. $4 million to go away. Take your shop. Move to another city. Start fresh. Kellen gets to keep his reputation intact. The company doesn't get dragged through tabloid headlines, and you get to live comfortably. Everyone wins. Except Revi. Except your grandson, who just started knowing his father. Odette waved a hand dismissively. Children adapt. He's 3. He won't remember any of this in a year. You don't know him at all, and neither does Kellen, really. He's playing house right now because he feels guilty. But guilt fades. And when it does, where will you be? A single mother with a flower shop and a child who won't understand why his father stopped showing up. The words hit where they were meant to hurt. Because Nalea had thought the same thing, had lain awake nights wondering if Kellen's consistency was just temporary, if he'd get bored, if he'd leave. But she'd also seen the way he looked at Revi, the way his whole face changed when their son ran to him at the park, the way he'd spent 3 months showing up, no matter what. He won't leave, Nalea said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Everyone leaves eventually, dear. Odette's voice was almost pitying. The question is whether you'll be smart enough to take the money before he does. Get out. Nalea. Both women turned. Glenna stood in the doorway to the back room, holding a pair of garden shears. Her face was calm, but her eyes were volcanic. Oh, good, Odette said, the grandmother. Perhaps you can talk some sense into. Get out of my granddaughter's shop. Glenna's voice was quiet, deadly quiet. I'm trying to protect my family. By throwing money at a woman who's raising your grandson? By treating her like she's something you can buy? Glenna walked forward slowly. Odette actually took a step back. Let me tell you something about family, since you clearly don't understand it. Family isn't about blood or money or reputation. It's about showing up. And your son, he's been showing up every Saturday, rain or shine. Not because he has to, because he wants to. That's just guilt. No, honey, that's love. And if you can't recognize it, that says more about you than it does about him. Odette's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. All of you. This will end badly. Glenna picked up the check. Then she did something that made Nalea's heart stop. She walked to the small fireplace they kept in the corner for winter, lit a match, and set the check on fire. $4 million turned to ash in seconds. Odette went white. You can't, that's... Already did. Glenna dropped the burning check into the fireplace. Now get out before I decide to burn something else. You'll regret this. Odette's voice was shaking with rage. All of you will regret this. I will make sure my son understands what kind of people you really are. I will make sure he chooses his family over. He already did. The voice came from the doorway. Kellen stood there, breathing hard like he'd been running. His eyes went from his mother to the ashes in the fireplace to Nalea's shocked face. How did you? Nalea started. Marcus called me. Said my mother's driver was parked outside your shop. He looked at Odette. What did you do? I tried to protect you. Protect our family legacy. Protect everything we've built. By trying to buy off the mother of my child? She's using you, Kellen. Can't you see that? She waited 3 years to tell you about the boy. Now suddenly she's letting you play father. She's positioning herself for... Stop. Kellen's voice cut like a knife. Just stop. He walked past his mother, stood next to Nalea. I know what you think. That she's a gold digger. That she's manipulating me. That she's not good enough for the Cross name. Odette didn't deny it. But you're wrong. Kellen's voice softened. She didn't tell me about Revi because I didn't give her a way to. She didn't ask me for money. Didn't ask me for anything. She built a life for our son without me because I wasn't there. And now she's giving me a chance I don't deserve. He turned to Nalea. His eyes were pleading. I'm sorry. I didn't know she would do this. Nalea's throat was tight. You should go. What? You should go. It's too much. Your mother's right. This is too complicated. No. Kellen stepped closer. No, she's not right. And I'm not leaving. Your mother just tried to pay me to disappear. And my grandmother just burned $4 million to prove you won't. Kellen looked at Glenna with something like awe. Thank you. Glenna shrugged. Wasn't mine to keep anyway. And money like that always has strings. Odette found her voice again. Kellen, if you continue this relationship, there will be consequences. The board, the shareholders, they won't let them vote me out then. The room went silent. Odette looked like he'd slapped her. If the board wants to remove me because I'm choosing my son over their comfort, let them. If shareholders want to tank the stock because I'm building a family, let them. I'll find another way. I'll build something new, but I'm not walking away from Revi. Not again. You're being irrational. No, I'm being a father. For the first time in my life, I'm actually being a father. Odette stared at him like she didn't recognize him. Then she picked up her purse, straightened her jacket. You'll come to your senses. You always do. She walked to the door, paused. When this falls apart, and it will, don't come running back expecting me to fix it. Then she was gone. The shop was silent, except for the clock ticking on the wall. Kellen turned to Nalea. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have warned you. Should have told you about my mother. Should have. Why didn't you? Why didn't I what? Take the easy way out. When she said she'd have the board vote you out, you could have just walked away. Blamed it on business, on circumstances. No one would have judged you. Kellen looked at her like the answer was obvious. Because I don't want the easy way out. I want this. You and Revi. Complicated and messy and hard. I want this. Even if it costs you everything? It won't cost me everything. He stepped closer. Walking away would cost me everything. This is the first thing I've wanted that actually matters. Nalea felt tears sliding down her face. I'm scared. Me too. What if your mother's right? What if this is too hard? What if we can't make it work? Then we'll figure it out. Together. Glenna cleared her throat. I'm going to check on Revi. You two talk. She disappeared into the back room, leaving them alone. Nalea sat down on the floor, suddenly exhausted. Kellen sat next to her, not touching, just present. $4 million, she whispered. She really thought she could just pay me to disappear. She doesn't understand. People like her, they've spent their whole lives believing money can solve everything, can buy anything, can fix anything. Can it? No. Kellen looked at the ashes in the fireplace. Some things can't be bought. Some things you have to earn. They sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Nalea asked, What happens now? Now? Kellen smiled sadly. Now I probably have to have a very long, very difficult conversation with my mother, and my board, and probably a therapist. And us. Us? He looked at her. I show up. Same as always. Every Saturday. Every time you'll let me, until you believe I'm not going anywhere. What if I never believe it? Then I'll keep showing up anyway. Nalea laughed despite everything. You're stubborn. I learned from the best. He gestured around the shop. You built all this from nothing, raised an incredible kid alone, survived everything. If that's not stubborn, I don't know what is. She leaned her head against the wall. Your mother hates me. My mother hates anyone who disrupts her plans. Don't take it personally. Hard not to when she's offering millions to get rid of me. Look at it this way. You're valuable enough to be worth $4 million. That's not funny. Little bit funny. Nalea elbowed him gently. Then more seriously, what if she makes good on her threats? What if you lose the company? Then I'll build another one. Or I won't. Maybe I'll learn to arrange flowers. You're terrible at arranging flowers. I'll learn. He smiled. I've got a great teacher. Glenna appeared in the doorway. Revi wants to know if Kellen's coming to the park on Saturday. They both looked at her. Both looked at each other. Kellen stood, offered Nalaya his hand. Tell him yes. Tell him I'll be there. Nalaya took his hand. Let him pull her up. Yeah? Yeah, always. Glenna burns the check and delivers a chilling line. You want to scare someone, honey? Try the mirror. What's worth more, legacy or love? Comment below with your answer. Kellen found his mother in the penthouse office of Cross Industries 3 days later. She was standing by the window, looking out over Atlanta like she owned it, which in some ways she did. The Cross family had built half the skyline. Their money was in every building, every deal, every corner of the city's growth. You wanted to talk, Odette said without turning around. You tried to pay off the mother of my child. I tried to protect you from a gold digger. Kellen laughed, bitter. A gold digger who turned down $4 million. That's not how gold digging works, Mother. She turned to face him. Don't be naive. She turned it down because she's playing a longer game. She wants marriage. Wants the Cross name. Wants everything. You don't know her at all. And you do. You spent one night with her 3 years ago and a few months playing park dad. That doesn't make you an expert on her character. No. But it makes me a witness to it. And everything I've seen tells me she's stronger, smarter, and more genuine than anyone in our circle has ever been. Odette's face hardened. You're thinking with your heart, not your head. Good. Maybe it's about time I did. The board meets next week. They'll want to discuss your recent behavior, your disappearances, your lack of focus. If they find out about the child, let them find out. Kellen walked closer. I'm done hiding. Done pretending my personal life doesn't exist so the shareholders feel comfortable. You'll destroy everything your father built. Dad built a company. I'm trying to build a life. There's a difference. Odette's jaw tightened. You sound just like him. Near the end, when he started talking about slowing down, about spending more time with family, about what really mattered. She turned back to the window, and then he died. Heart attack at 59. All that talk about family and what mattered, and he worked himself to death anyway. Kellen felt something crack in his chest. Is that what you're afraid of? That I'll end up like him? I'm afraid you'll waste your life chasing something that isn't real. Love doesn't build empires, Kellen. Discipline does. Focus does. Sacrifice does. Dad sacrificed his health, his happiness, his relationship with me. And for what? So I could inherit a company I don't even like running? The words hung in the air like confession. Odette stared at him. What did you say? I don't like it. The company, the board meetings, the acquisitions, the endless pursuit of bigger and better and more. I'm good at it. But I don't like it. Then what do you want? Kellen thought about Saturday mornings at the park, about Revi's laugh, about the way Nalaya looked when she was arranging flowers, focus, peaceful, completely herself. I want to be present, he said quietly. I want to know my son. I want to build something that matters, not just something that makes money. Money matters when you have bills to pay, mouths to feed. Nalaya's been feeding Revi for 3 years without my money, without any help. She knows more about what matters than I ever will. Odette's voice turned cold. If you go through with this, if you make this woman and this child your priority, I will not support you. The board will not support you. You'll lose everything. Kellen walked to the door, stopped, looked back at his mother. I already lost everything once, the night I walked away from her, the 3 years I missed with my son. That's what losing everything actually looks like. Everything else? It's just stuff. He left before she could respond. Marcus was waiting in the hallway. From his expression, he'd heard every word. That went well, Marcus said dryly. She'll come around. You sure about that? No. Kellen rubbed his face. But I'm sure about Revi, about being his father. Everything else I'll figure out. The board meeting is Thursday. I know. They're going to ask about your priorities, about your commitment. And I'll tell them the truth, which is that I have a 3-year-old son who's teaching me more about leadership than any business school ever did. That I'm committed to building a life, not just a legacy. And if that's not good enough for them, they can vote me out. Marcus was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Yeah. I've worked with you for 8 years. Never seen you this alive. Kellen smiled. Thanks, Marcus. Don't thank me yet. If the board votes you out, I'm probably out too. Then we'll start our own company. Build something better. You make it sound so easy. It's not. Kellen headed for the elevator. But neither is being a parent, and I'm doing that anyway. He went straight from the office to Vine and Verse. Found Nalaya in the back, teaching Revi how to trim rose stems without hurting himself. Kellen. Revi ran over, wrapped himself around Kellen's legs. Look, I'm helping. You're doing great, buddy. Kellen scooped him up. What are you helping with? Ma's making flowers for a wedding. She says weddings are when people promise to stay. Revi's innocent summary made both adults go quiet. That's right, Nalaya said finally. People promise to stay together. Does everyone keep their promises? Revi asked. Kellen looked at Nalaya, held her eyes. Not everyone, but some people do. Some people mean it when they promise. How do you know which ones? Revi's question was heartbreaking in its simplicity. You watch, Nalaya said softly. You watch if they show up. If they do what they say they'll do. If they keep coming back even when it's hard. Revi thought about this. You keep coming back. He was talking to Kellen. I do, Kellen said, voice rough. And I always will, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Revi seemed satisfied with this answer. Okay, can we read the dinosaur book now? Absolutely. They went to the small reading corner Nalaya had set up in the shop. Kellen read, while Revi pointed at pictures and added commentary about which dinosaurs would win in fights. Nalaya watched them, hands covered in flower residue, heart doing complicated things in her chest. Glenna appeared beside her. He told his mother off. How do you know? Marcus called. Said it was quite the scene. And Kellen chose you. Chose Revi. Chose this life over his mother's approval. Nalaya felt tears prick her eyes. He shouldn't have to choose. Baby, sometimes choosing is how you know it's real. If it came easy, would you even trust it? Nalaya didn't have an answer for that. That night, after Revi was asleep and Glenna had gone home, Kellen helped Nalaya close up the shop. They worked in comfortable silence, him taking out trash or wiping down counters. Finally, Nalaya asked, What did your mother say? When you told her that I'm throwing my life away, that I'll regret it, that the board will vote me out. Will they? Maybe. Probably. He shrugged. The meeting's Thursday, and if they do, then I'll figure something else out. You're really willing to lose everything for this? For us? Kellen stopped what he was doing, looked at her directly. Nalaya, I already told you, losing the company isn't losing everything. Losing you and Revi again? That would be losing everything. She bit her lip. I'm scared this is too good to be true. That something will happen. That I'll leave. He finished for her. I know, and I know nothing I say will convince you otherwise. So I'll just keep showing up, keep proving it, for as long as it takes. What if it takes forever? Then I'll show up forever. Nalaya laughed, despite the tears in her eyes. You can't promise that. Watch me. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, close enough to remember that night 3 years ago when the world had felt full of possibility. I'm not the same person I was that night, he said quietly. I'm better now. Because of Revi, because of you, because you're teaching me how to be someone worth keeping. You're already worth keeping. Not yet, but I'm working on it. Nalaya reached up, touched his face, just his cheek, just gentle. Thank you, she whispered, for showing up, for trying, for loving him. Kellen covered her hand with his. I love him. And He stopped, took a breath. I'm falling in love with you too. Again. Or maybe still. I don't know, but I needed you to know that. Nalaya's breath caught. Kellen, you don't have to say it back. Don't have to feel the same way. I just needed you to know that this isn't just about Revi for me. It's about you too. About us. About building something real. She didn't say it back. Couldn't yet. But she didn't pull away either. They stood like that for a long moment, in the quiet shop, surrounded by flowers and possibility. Thursday came too fast. Kellen walked into the boardroom at 9 o'clock sharp. 12 faces looked back at him, some sympathetic, some hostile, all waiting. His mother sat at the far end, face unreadable. Gentlemen, ladies. Kellen took his seat at the head of the table. I believe we have some things to discuss. The meeting lasted 3 hours. They questioned his commitment, his focus, his priorities, his recent behavior. He answered honestly, told them about Revi, about choosing to be a father, about building a life outside the office. Some board members nodded, understood, supported him. Others didn't. The vote was 8-4 in favor of removing him as CEO. Kellen cleaned out his office that afternoon. Marcus helped him pack boxes. Didn't say much. Didn't need to. At 6 o'clock, Kellen walked out of Aeon Path Technologies for the last time as its leader. He drove straight to Vine and Verse. Nalaya was locking up. Saw his face. Knew immediately. They voted you out. He nodded. I'm sorry. I'm not. She stared at him. What? I'm not sorry. He smiled. Felt lighter than he had in years. I'm free, Nalaya. For the first time in my life, I'm actually free. Free to do what? Free to figure it out. Free to build something new. Free to be present. He pulled something from his pocket. Not a ring. A key. I bought a house. Not a mansion. Just a house. 3 bedrooms. Big backyard. 5 minutes from here. Kellen, it's not for me. Well, not just for me. He set the key on the counter between them. It's for us. If you want it. If you're ready. No pressure. No expectations. Just an option. A place where Revi could have his own room. Where you could have a garden. Where we could try building something together. Nalaya stared at the key. You bought a house. I bought a possibility. What if I'm not ready? Then the house sits empty until you are. Or it doesn't. Whatever you need. You lost your job today. Best thing that ever happened to me. Nalaya laughed through tears. You're crazy. Probably. But I'm crazy about you. About Revi. About this life we're building. She picked up the key. Held it. Felt the weight of what it represented. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. She put the key in her pocket. Then did something that surprised both of them. She kissed him. Not long. Not dramatic. Just a soft press of lips that tasted like promise and fear and hope all mixed together. When she pulled back, Kellen was staring at her like she'd hung the moon. What was that for? He whispered. For showing up. For meaning it. For being worth keeping after all. Then maybe the empire needs to be ruined. What's worth more? Legacy or love? Comment below with your answer. The key sat in Nalaya's pocket for 3 days before she told anyone about it. She'd touch it sometimes when she thought no one was looking. Feel the metal warm under her fingers. Wonder what it would be like to say yes. To let Kellen all the way in. To build something that looked like a real family. But fear had roots deeper than hope. Glenna noticed, because grandmothers always notice. What's got you so distracted? Nalaya was arranging tulips for a funeral. Her hands stilled. Kellen bought a house. Glenna raised an eyebrow. That's fast. Not for him. For us. If I want it. Do you want it? That's the question, isn't it? Nalaya set down the tulips. Wiped her hands. Looked at her grandmother with eyes that hadn't been young in 3 years. What if I say yes, and he leaves anyway? What if I let Revi get attached to a house, a life, a father, and then it all falls apart? How do I recover from that? How does Revi? Glenna walked over, took Nalaya's face in her hands the way she'd done when Nalaya was small. Baby, you can't live your whole life protecting yourself from hurt. That's not living. That's hiding. I've been hiding for 3 years. It's kept us safe. Safe isn't the same as happy. We're happy. Are you? Glenna's eyes were gentle. Or are you just surviving? The question hit like a punch. Revi appeared from the back room, dinosaur toy in hand. Mama, when's Kellen coming? Saturday, baby. Same as always. Can he come today instead? Not today. He's busy. Doing what? Nalaya didn't know how to answer. Kellen had been vague about his plans since leaving Aeon Path. Said he was figuring things out. Taking time. Exploring options. He's working on something important, Nalaya said finally. More important than dinosaurs? Nothing's more important than dinosaurs. That's what I think too. Revi went back to playing, satisfied. Glenna gave Nalaya a look. That boy loves him. I know. And he loves that boy. Shows up. Keeps promises. Does everything you asked. I know. So what's the problem? The problem is I'm terrified. Nalaya's voice cracked. I'm terrified of believing this is real and having it ripped away. I'm terrified of needing someone again. I'm terrified that Kellen will wake up one day and realize this life is too hard too. Complicated, too ordinary, and I'll be left explaining to Revy why his father left. Again. Glenna was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something unexpected. Your grandfather left me once. Did I ever tell you that? Nalaya stared. What? Year 3 of our marriage. Said he wasn't ready. Said he needed space. Packed a bag and drove off. You never told me that. Because he came back. 3 days later. Crying. Apologizing. Saying he'd been scared and stupid, and he wasn't running again. Did you take him back? Glenna smiled. Baby, you wouldn't be here if I hadn't. But how did you know? How did you know he wouldn't leave again? I didn't. Glenna shrugged. That's the thing about love, baby. You never know for sure. You just decide if the person is worth the risk. And Granddad was worth it. Every day for 47 years until he died, he was worth it. Nalaya felt tears sliding down her face. I don't know if I'm brave enough. You're the bravest person I know. You had a baby alone. Built a business from nothing. Survived everything life threw at you. That's not bravery. That was necessity. Same thing sometimes. Nalaya pulled the key from her pocket. Held it up to the light. It was silver. Simple. Ordinary. But it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. What if I say yes and mess it up? What if I'm not ready? What if? Then you figure it out. Together. That's what families do. We're not a family yet. Glenna laughed. Baby, you've been a family since the night that boy was conceived. You're just figuring out what shape that family takes. That evening, after Revy was asleep, Nalaya texted Kellen, Can I see the house? The response came immediately. Tomorrow? 10 m? She stared at the message for a long time before typing. Yes. She didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining possibilities and disasters in equal measure. Morning came gray and cold. She dropped Revy at preschool, kissed him 3 times, drove to the address Kellen had sent. The house was perfect. Not too big, not too small. Craftsman style with a wide porch and mature trees in the yard. The kind of house that looked like it had stories to tell. The kind that looked like home. Kellen was sitting on the porch steps waiting. He stood when her car pulled up. You came, he said, like he'd half expected her not to. I came. He unlocked the door. Let her go in first. The inside was empty except for one room. The smallest bedroom had been set up completely. Dinosaur bedsheets, shelves full of books, a small desk with art supplies. Everything a 3-year-old would need. Nalaya stood in the doorway, hand over her mouth. I know you haven't decided yet, Kellen said quietly behind her. But I wanted him to have a space. Wanted him to know he's welcome here. Wanted. That this isn't just about you and me. It's about him. You set up his room before I said yes. Had to. Took me 3 trips to 5 different stores to find dinosaur sheets that weren't babyish but weren't too scary. Did you know there are categories of dinosaur bedding? It's overwhelming. Nalaya laughed through tears. You went to 5 stores. 6. But the 6th one didn't have anything good. She walked through the rest of the house. Master bedroom with big windows. 2nd bedroom that could be an office or craft room. Kitchen with enough counter space to work. Backyard with room for a garden. Every room felt like possibility. They ended up in the kitchen. Nalaya leaned against the counter. Kellen stood by the window. Tell me what you're scared of, he said. Everything. She hugged herself. I'm scared you'll leave. Scared I'll mess this up. Scared Revy will get hurt. Scared I'll let myself need you, and then you'll disappear. I won't disappear. You can't promise that. No. He turned to face her. But I can promise I'll try. Every day. Promise I'll show up. Promise I'll fight for this, even when it's hard. What if trying isn't enough? Then we'll figure something else out. But Nalaya, he stepped closer. At some point, you have to decide if you're going to live afraid or if you're going to risk being happy. She looked around the empty kitchen. Imagined Revy at the table doing homework. Imagined Sunday mornings and family dinners and ordinary beautiful chaos. Imagined a life where she wasn't doing it all alone. This house, she said quietly. It's not some grand gesture, is it? It's not you trying to buy me or impress me. No, it's me trying to build something. With you. For us. A foundation. Why? Because I love you, both of you, and I want a life that reflects that. Nalaya's breath caught. You love me? Yes. Since when? Probably since that first night. Maybe before. Maybe the moment you laughed at something I said, and I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. She wanted to say it back. Wanted to tell him that she loved him too, had been falling back in love with him every Saturday morning, every dinosaur book, every time he showed up exactly when he said he would. But the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she asked, "What do you want from me?" "I want you to take the key. Move in when you're ready. Let me be part of your life. Let me be Revi's father officially. Let me wake up in the same house as both of you and know I didn't miss another day. And if I'm not ready, then I'll wait. Keep showing up at the shop. Keep taking Revi to the park. Keep proving I'm not going anywhere. For as long as it takes." She pulled the key from her pocket, held it between them. "What if I take this and still hold back? What if I can't give you everything right away? Then you give me what you can, when you can. No pressure, no timeline, just forward motion." Nalaya looked at the key, at Kellen, at the empty house that could become a home. She thought about Revi's face when Kellen showed up, about Saturday mornings, about poetry and flowers and second chances. She thought about her grandmother burning $4 million because some things can't be bought. She thought about being brave. "I need to tell you something first," she said. "Okay, that poem I wrote you, the morning after, that wasn't the whole truth." Kellen waited. "The truth is," Nalaya's voice shook, "I fell in love with you that night, before I knew your name, before I knew anything except how you made me feel. And when you left, it broke something in me, made me believe I wasn't worth staying for." "Nalaya, let me finish." She held up a hand. "I built walls, thick ones, told myself I didn't need anyone, that Revi and I were enough. And we were. We are. But," she looked at him, really looked at him, "but I don't want to be enough alone anymore. I want to be enough together." Kellen's eyes filled with tears. "I can't promise I won't be scared," Nalaya continued. "Can't promise I won't doubt. Can't promise I'll be easy. But I can promise I'll try. Promise I'll show up too." She held out the key between them, not giving it back, offering to share it. "So, yes, to the house, to us, to trying." Kellen took the key, but he didn't pocket it. Instead, he set it on the counter, pulled Nalaya close, and kissed her. Not like their first kiss 3 years ago, rushed and desperate and hiding from the world. This kiss was slow, sure, full of promises they'd both keep. When they pulled apart, Kellen rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, and I'm going to keep loving you, even when you doubt, even when you're scared, even when it's hard." "I love you too," Nalaya whispered. "I'm terrified, but I love you too." They stood in the empty kitchen holding each other, building something new from the broken pieces of what they'd been. Outside, it started to rain, the kind of rain that makes gardens grow. Revi asked about the house that night at dinner. "Mama, Kellen says I have a room with dinosaurs. Can we see it?" Nalaya looked at Glenna, then at her son's hopeful face. "We can see it Saturday. How's that? Can we live there?" The question was so innocent, so full of hope. "Maybe, baby. Would you like that?" Revi nodded enthusiastically. "Then I could see Kellen every day instead of just Saturdays. Would that make you happy?" "Yes." Revi bounced in his chair. "And maybe he could read me stories before bed. And we could have pancakes. And play in the backyard." He had it all planned out. A whole life imagined in the space between question and answer. Nalaya looked at Glenna again. Her grandmother smiled, nodded once. "Okay," Nalaya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Let's try it. Let's see what it's like to be a family." Revi cheered, jumped up and hugged her so hard they nearly toppled over. That night after Revi was asleep, Nalaya sat in her small apartment looking around at 3 years of survival, at the life she'd built from nothing. She pulled out the leather journal Kellen had given her months ago, opened to a fresh page, wrote, "Some people are lightning strikes, beautiful, brief, impossible to hold. But some people come back as steady rain, showing up daily, quietly, teaching flowers how to bloom again. And some people are both, the storm that breaks you open and the gentle rain that grows you whole." She closed the journal, packed it in the box marked new house, smiled through her tears. Saturday came bright and cold. They spent the day moving Nalaya's things. Not all of them, just enough to start. Kellen carried boxes. Revi helped by carrying his stuffed dinosaurs one by one. Glenna supervised and made sandwiches. By sunset, the house looked less empty, more like possibility turning into reality. Revi fell asleep on his new dinosaur bed before dinner, exhausted from excitement and helping. Nalaya and Kellen stood in the doorway watching him sleep. "We did good," Kellen whispered. "We're doing good," Nalaya corrected. "It's not done yet." "No, but we're trying. Together." She took his hand. Squeezed once. "Yeah, together." Kellen offers the home. She rejects the symbol, not the man. Revi creates a new flower poem. This one says home is people, not places. Like and comment below. What does home mean to you? The wedding happened on a Tuesday in November under a garden arbor that Glenna had been growing in secret for 6 months. Nalaya had no idea. She woke up that morning thinking it was just another ordinary day. Kellen had taken Revi to preschool. She was opening the shop. The morning was cold and perfect, the kind of Atlanta autumn day that made everything feel possible. Then Glenna showed up at 9 o'clock with a dress bag and tears in her eyes. "What's this?" Nalaya asked. "Open it." Inside was a dress. Simple, cream-colored, tea-length. The kind of dress that whispered rather than shouted. The kind that said this is real, not a show. "Mama, what?" "Kellen called me 3 weeks ago. Asked permission. Asked blessing. Asked if I thought you were ready." "Ready for what?" Glenna smiled. "To stop being scared and start being happy." Nalaya's hands shook as she touched the fabric. "This is a wedding dress." "It is. But he hasn't. There's no ring or proposal or... There's a garden. There's family. There's a man who loves you waiting under an arbor I've been growing since July." She took Nalaya's hands. "Baby, you've been engaged to this life since the moment you said yes to the house. This is just making it official. I can't." "What about the shop?" "Already handled. Victoria from Aeon Path is covering. Apparently Kellen's been planning this for weeks." "Weeks?" "Weeks." Glenna pulled Nalaya toward the back room. "Now get changed before you talk yourself out of being happy." An hour later, Nalaya stood in front of the mirror in a dress she hadn't chosen wearing. Makeup Glenna had applied while telling stories about her own wedding day. She looked beautiful. Terrified. Ready. The garden was in the backyard of their house. Their house. The words still felt strange and wonderful. Kellen had strung lights through the trees. Set up chairs for exactly 12 people. Small, intimate, perfect. The arbor Glenna had grown was covered in jasmine and roses and morning glories, all woven together like a promise. Kellen stood under it in a simple gray suit, holding Revi's hand. Revi was wearing a tiny suit too, carrying a pillow with 2 rings. When Nalaya appeared at the back door, Kellen's breath caught. Revi's face lit up. "Mama, you look like a princess." She walked across the grass in bare feet because shoes felt wrong for this. Glenna walked beside her, steady and sure. The guests were few. Marcus and his wife. Victoria, a couple of Nalaya's regular customers who'd become friends. Simone from the catering company who'd snuck her into that gala 4 years ago. No one from Kellen's old world. No board members. No business associates. No Odette. Nalaya had asked about his mother. Kellen had shaken his head. "I invited her. She chose not to come. That's on her, not us." Glenna officiated because of course she did. She'd gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. "Dearly beloved," she started, then stopped, laughed. "You know what? We're not doing that formal stuff. This isn't that kind of wedding." She looked at Kellen and Nalaya standing under the arbor with Revi between them. "This is a family that built itself from broken pieces. From one night that turned into forever. From fear that turned into courage. From hurt that turned into healing." Nalaya was crying already. Glenna continued, "I watched this girl, my granddaughter, raise a baby alone, build a business, survive things that would have broken most people. And I watched this man," she gestured to Kellen, "show up. Day after day, week after week, proving he was worth keeping. So we're here today not to start something new, but to celebrate what you've already built, to make official what your hearts already know." She turned to Kellen. "You got words for this woman?" Kellen took Nalaya's hands. His were shaking. I left you once. Worst decision of my life. But you, he smiled through tears, you took that mistake and turned it into something beautiful. You raised our son, built a life, became the strongest person I've ever known. I can't give you back the 3 years I missed. Can't erase the nights you were alone or the times you were scared. But I can promise you every day forward, every morning and every night, every scraped knee and every bedtime story, every hard conversation and every quiet moment. I can promise you I'm not running, not ever again. Nalaya couldn't speak for a moment, just held his hands and tried to remember how to breathe. Finally, she found her voice. You came back. That's the thing people don't understand. You didn't just show up once. You came back, over and over, every Saturday. Every time I doubted, every time I pushed you away. You taught me that love isn't just the lightning strike. It's also the steady rain, the showing up, the choosing each other when it would be easier to walk away. She looked down at Revi, who was watching them with serious eyes. You gave me this boy, this perfect, beautiful boy, and then you came back and helped me raise him. That's not romance. That's real, and real is better. Glenna pulled out the rings. Revi handed them over carefully, proudly. These were simple, no diamonds, just gold bands inscribed with coordinates, the exact location where they'd met 4 years ago. Kellen slipped a ring on Nalaya's finger. I promised to show up. Nalaya slipped a ring on Kellen's finger. I promised to let you. Glenna beamed. Then, by the power vested in me by the internet and the state of Georgia, I declare you married. Now kiss and make this legal before I cry all my makeup off. They kissed, soft and sure, full of history and future all mixed together. Revi jumped up and down. Are you married now? Are we a real family? Kellen scooped him up. We've always been a real family, buddy. Now we just have the paperwork to prove it. The celebration was small. Cake from a local bakery, music from someone's phone, dancing in the grass while the sun set and the lights turned on. Nalaya danced with Kellen, with Revi, with Glenna. Felt happiness settle into her bones like something she could finally trust. They were cutting the cake when a car pulled up outside. Everyone went quiet. Odette Cross stepped out wearing black and carrying a small gift bag. She walked through the gate, stopped when she saw the arbor, the lights, the intimate gathering. Saw her son with his arms around a woman in a cream dress and a little boy with his eyes. I'm too late, she said. It wasn't a question. Kellen turned, kept his arm around Nalaya. Yes, you are. Odette looked at them for a long moment. At the life they'd built without her permission. At the family she tried to destroy with a check. I came to apologize. The words hung in the air like something fragile. Nalaya felt Kellen tense, felt him ready to tell his mother to leave. She squeezed his hand once, stepped forward. Mrs. Cross. Her voice was steady. You tried to pay me to disappear, tried to convince your son I wasn't worth his time, tried to destroy this before it had a chance to be real. Odette's jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. So no, Nalaya continued. You don't get to apologize and make this okay. You don't get to show up at our wedding uninvited and expect forgiveness. I understand. Odette turned to leave, but Nalaya's voice stopped her. You do get to meet your grandson. Properly, if you want to. Odette turned back. Hope flickered across her face. Really? Really? Because Revi deserves to know all his family, even the complicated parts, even the parts that hurt us. She looked at Kellen. He nodded slowly, reached down and picked up Revi. Buddy, this is my mother, your grandmother. Revi studied Odette with serious eyes. Do you like dinosaurs? The question was so pure, so innocent, that Odette actually smiled. A real smile. Small but genuine. I don't know much about them. Will you teach me? Okay. Revi reached out his hand. I'm Revi. I'm 3, almost 4. I like Ankylosaurus because they have armor. Odette took his small hand carefully, like she was holding something precious she didn't deserve. That's a very good choice, she said quietly. Kellen set Revi down. The boy ran back to the cake immediately, crisis averted, ready to celebrate. Odette looked at her son, then at Nalaya. I don't expect forgiveness, don't deserve it, but if you'll let me, I'd like to try, to be part of his life. To be, she hesitated. To be better. Actions, Nalea said. Not words. Show up. Be consistent. Prove you mean it. Odette smiled sadly. That sounds familiar. Kellen taught me well. Odette opened the gift bag, pulled out a small box. Inside was a vintage pocket watch. This was your father's, she said to Kellen. He gave it to me the day you were born. Said it was a reminder that time matters, that being present matters. That legacy isn't about buildings or money. It's about moments. She handed it to Kellen. I should have remembered that sooner. I'm sorry I didn't. Kellen took the watch, held it carefully. Thank you. Odette looked around at the small celebration, at the lights and the love and the simple beauty of it all. This is lovely, she said. Really lovely. I'm sorry I almost missed it. You didn't miss it, Glenna said from behind them. You showed up late, but you showed up. That's something. Odette turned, faced Glenna, the grandmother who'd burned her check, who'd protected her granddaughter like a lion. I'm Odette Cross. I know who you are. Glenna's voice was cool. Question is, do you know who you want to be? The two older women stared at each other, some silent battle of wills happening in a language only grandmothers spoke. Finally, Odette said, I want to be someone my grandson respects, even if I have to earn it. Glenna nodded once. Then you can stay for cake. But you're on probation. Understood. They ate cake. They danced. Revi fell asleep on Kellen's shoulder around 8 o'clock, exhausted from joy. Nalea found herself standing next to Odette near the arbor. Why did you really come? Nalea asked quietly. Odette was quiet for a long moment. Because I saw the wedding photo my assistant accidentally texted me. Saw my son's face. Saw him happier than I've ever seen him. And I realized, she took a shaky breath, I realized I was about to lose. The only family I have left because I couldn't let go of control. That must have been hard to admit. It was terrifying. Odette looked at her. You scare me, you know. I scare you. You're everything I'm not. Brave where I'm careful. Open where I'm closed. Willing to risk everything for love. And my son chose you. Chose this. Chose a life I don't understand. She turned to face Nalea directly. But I'm trying to understand. Trying to see what he sees. Trying to be someone worthy of being in that little boy's life. Nalea studied her. Saw something she hadn't expected. Saw fear. Loneliness. Regret. Saw someone who'd built walls so high she couldn't see what they were keeping out. It won't be easy, Nalea said. Trust takes time. I have time. Odette smiled sadly. And apparently I have a grandson who likes dinosaurs and needs a grandmother who'll show up. Can you do that? Show up consistently? I can try. That's all we're asking. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Odette did something unexpected. She pulled a small envelope from her purse. Inside was a check. Not for millions. For $500. For the shop, Odette said. For flowers. Not a bribe. Not control. Just a grandmother buying flowers from her grandson's mother's business. Nalea took it. This time she didn't burn it. Thank you, she said. They weren't friends, weren't close, but it was a start. The party wound down around 9. People hugged goodbye, made promises to get together soon. Left Kellen and Nalea and Revi in their backyard under string lights, officially a family now. Kellen carried sleeping Revi inside, laid him in his dinosaur bed, kissed his forehead. Nalea stood in the doorway watching. This man, this boy, this life. You good? Kellen asked, appearing beside her. I'm married. You are. To you. To me. She laughed. How did this happen? You showed up at a gala. I fell in love. You raised our son. I came back. We figured it out. That's the short version. It's the only version that matters. They stood in the hallway of their house, in their life, in their future. Thank you, Nalea whispered. For what? For coming back. For keeping your promises. For being worth the risk. Kellen pulled her close. Thank you for letting me. For giving me a chance. For teaching me what family actually means. They went to bed that night as husband and wife. Fell asleep holding hands like teenagers. Woke up when Revi climbed in between them at 6 in the morning asking if they were still married. Yes, buddy, Kellen laughed. Still married. Forever? Forever. Even when I'm grown up? Even when you're grown up? Revi thought about this, then snuggled between them. Good. I like this family. Me too, buddy, Kellen said. Me too. Glenna officiates. Revi carries rings. A real family is born. Odette shows up uninvited, but is too late. She sees Kellen kiss Nalea's hand. She vanishes into the shadows. Revi reads a final flower poem out loud, the root remembered. And now it blooms. Drop a comment if you believe in second chances. The press conference happened on a cold Monday morning in January. Kellen stood on the steps of Aeon Path Technologies, the building he no longer ran, and faced 24 cameras. News outlets, tech reporters, business journalists, all waiting to hear why the billionaire CEO had walked away from his empire. Marcus stood beside him. Nalaya stood on his other side, holding Revi's hand. He'd asked her to come, said he needed his family there. She'd almost said no, almost told him this was his world, not hers. But then she remembered. They were building something new, something that didn't hide. So she came, in jeans and a simple sweater. No designer clothes, no pretense, just herself. Kellen stepped up to the microphone. 6 months ago, I made a choice. I chose my family over my company, chose being present over being powerful, chose love over legacy. The reporters leaned forward. Cameras clicked. Today, I'm here to announce something new. Not a company, not an acquisition, not another tech innovation. Something better. He pulled out a small portfolio, opened it. I'm partnering with Vine and Verse, my wife's flower shop, to create something we're calling Bloom Forward. It's a nonprofit that teaches young single parents how to start small businesses. We provide mentorship, microloans, and support. We help people build lives, not just companies. More camera clicks, murmurs from the crowd. My wife built a business while raising our son alone, built something beautiful from nothing. And I watched her do it with grace and strength and determination I'd never seen in any boardroom. He looked at Nalea. She was crying. So we're using our resources, her knowledge, my connections, our combined experience, to help other parents do the same, to prove that success isn't measured in stock prices or market share. It's measured in showing up, in being present, in building lives that matter. A reporter shouted a question. Mr. Cross, do you regret leaving Aeon Path? Not for a second. What about your mother? Sources say she's tried to contest your departure, freeze your assets. She's my son's grandmother. We're figuring it out. That's what families do. Another reporter. Is it true you named your new AI model after your son? Kellen smiled. Actually, Aeon Path did. The new board. They named it Revi in honor of innovation, creativity, and looking at the world with fresh eyes. My son inspired that without even trying. Revi tugged on Kellen's sleeve. Daddy, are we done yet? The reporters laughed. The moment was caught on camera. This powerful man crouching down to his 3-year-old son's level, listening seriously to whatever Revi was whispering. Yeah, buddy, we're almost done. Can we get ice cream after? Absolutely. Even though it's cold? Especially because it's cold. Kellen stood back up, faced the cameras one last time. I spent 35 years building a legacy. Turns out, the real legacy was waiting for me in a flower shop all along. Questions? The conference lasted another 20 minutes. But the clip that went viral was the one of Revi asking about ice cream. The one that showed Kellen as a father first, businessman second. The headline in the Atlanta Journal the next day read, Billionaire trades empire for family, launches nonprofit with wife. The comments section exploded. Some people called him crazy, said he'd thrown away everything, said Nalea must have manipulated him. But more people said they understood, said they wished they had the courage to do the same, said watching him choose family over fortune gave them permission to reevaluate their own lives. Bloom Forward launched 3 weeks later with seed funding from Kellen. His personal accounts and a waiting list of 200 single parents. Nalea ran the mentorship program, taught people about flowers and business and survival, showed them it was possible to build something beautiful from broken pieces. Kellen handled the business side, secured locations, built partnerships, connected people with resources. They worked together, sometimes argued, often laughed, always showed up. Revi turned 4 in May. They threw him a dinosaur party in the backyard, invited his preschool class. Glenna made the cake. Odette showed up with age-appropriate gifts and stayed for the whole party, making awkward conversation but trying. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. The shop expanded. They hired 2 employees. Started doing corporate events again, but only ones that aligned with their values. Kellen started teaching a class at Georgia Tech. Entrepreneurship for purpose, not just profit. Students loved him. Said he was different from other professors. More honest, more human. Life settled into rhythms. Saturday mornings at the park. Sunday dinners at Glenna's. Wednesday nights were family movie nights. Friday mornings, Kellen took Revy to preschool so Nalea could have quiet time at the shop. They fought sometimes. About money, about parenting, about whose turn it was to do dishes. Normal fights, the kind that get resolved with conversation and compromise and sometimes admitting you were wrong. But they showed up. Both of them. Every day. 6 months after the wedding, Nalea found out she was pregnant again. She told Kellen on a Tuesday morning. Handed him the test without saying anything. He stared at it. Then at her. Then back at the test. Really? Really? He picked her up. Spun her around. Kissed her like they were 19 and invincible. Revy's getting a sibling. Revy's getting a sibling. They told Revy that night. He was suspicious at first. Will the baby like dinosaurs? We can teach them. Will they take my room? No, buddy. They'll have their own room. Will they be little like me? Littler. You'll be the big brother. You'll teach them everything. Revy considered this. Then grinned. Okay, I'll be a good big brother. And he was. Their daughter was born in February. They named her Lyric because some stories are meant to be sung, not just told. She had Nalea's nose. Kellen's dark eyes. Revy's curious expression. Glenna cried when she held her. Odette came to the hospital and brought flowers. Stood awkwardly near the door until Revy dragged her over to see his baby sister. Look, Grammy Odette. She's so small. She is, Odette whispered. She's perfect. It took 2 years, but Odette slowly became part of their lives. Not central, not demanding, just present. She came to birthday parties, sent books, showed up. She and Nalea weren't close, but they were civil, respectful, working towards something that might someday be forgiveness. The morning of Lyric's first birthday, Kellen found Nalea in the shop early. She was arranging flowers for the party, simple, beautiful, full of meaning. You okay? He asked. I'm thinking. About what? About that night. 4 years ago. About how I thought it was just a moment. Just one night that would fade into nothing. She set down her scissors. Turned to face him. Turns out, some moments don't fade. Some moments plant roots. Some moments grow into entire lives. Best moment of my life, Kellen said. Even when I didn't know it yet. Mine too. She smiled. Even when I was terrified. Still terrified? Sometimes. But less. He kissed her forehead. I love you. Every version of you. Scared. Brave. Past. Present. Future. All of it. I love you too. Even when you're annoying. Especially when I'm annoying. They finished the flowers together. Set up for the party. Watched their kids play in the backyard. Revy teaching Lyric about flowers, telling her their names in his serious big brother voice. Glenna arrived with food. Odette arrived with presents. Friends filled the house with laughter and love. It was loud, chaotic, messy, perfect. That evening, after everyone had gone home and both kids were asleep, Nalea and Kellen sat on their back porch. The same arbor where they'd gotten married was covered in spring blooms. We did good, Nalea said. We're doing good, Kellen corrected. Still present tense, still building. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for letting me stay. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the garden grow, watching their life bloom. Inside, Revy had left a drawing on the kitchen table. A family portrait, stick figures with too many limbs and wonky smiles. Mom, Dad, me, baby Lyric, Gigi, Grammy Odette. Under it, in his careful preschool handwriting, my family. We show up. It wasn't eloquent, wasn't poetry, but it was truth. The next morning, Kellen went to Aeon Path for a board meeting, his first time back since being voted out. They'd invited him as an advisor, wanted his input on the Revi AI model's next iteration. He walked through the lobby, saw his replacement CEO, shook hands professionally. No bitterness, no regret, Just acknowledgement that this had been his path once, and now he was on a different one. The meeting went well. They listened to his ideas, thanked him for his contributions, asked if he'd consider consulting regularly. He agreed, on his terms, limited hours, family first. They didn't argue. He left the building at 3 o'clock, picked up Revi from preschool, stopped for ice cream even though it wasn't ice cream day. "Why are we getting ice cream?" Revi asked, delighted but confused. "Because I can. Because you're my son. Because life is short, and ice cream makes it better." "That's good reasoning," Revi said seriously. "Very logical." Kellen laughed. "Where'd you learn that word?" You say it all the time in phone meetings." "Do I?" "Yes. And synergy. And circle back. Those are boring words, Daddy." "You're absolutely right. Those are very boring words." They ate ice cream, talked about dinosaurs, went home to their family. It was ordinary, quiet, beautiful. Nalaya was in the shop when they got home. She looked up, saw them covered in chocolate ice cream, and shook her head fondly. "You two are a mess. The best kind of mess," Kellen said. That night, after dinner and bath time and stories, Nalaya pulled out her journal. The one Kellen had given her years ago. It was almost full now, filled with poems about second chances and showing up and roots that grow deep. She turned to a fresh page, wrote, "This isn't quiet justice, it's loud love, the kind that announces itself with morning coffee and scraped knees, the kind that builds empires from flower stems and whispered promises, the kind that says, 'You left, but you came back, and I was brave enough to let you.' We are not a fairy tale. We are better. We are choice and effort and showing up when it's hard. We are the root that remembered. We are the bloom that happened anyway. We are the lightning and the steady rain. We are the family we chose to become." She closed the journal, smiled, went to bed. 5 years after that press conference, Bloom Forward had helped 300 single parents start businesses. Nalaya's shop had 3 locations. Revi was in 3rd grade and still loved dinosaurs. Lyric was learning to read. Glenna was still strong as ever. Odette had learned to be a grandmother. And Kellen? Kellen was exactly where he wanted to be. Not in a corner office, not in boardrooms, but at dinner tables and school plays and bedtime stories. He traded an empire for a family. Best decision he ever made. Sometimes people asked if he missed it. The power, the prestige, the world he'd left behind. He'd smile and say no. Say he had everything he needed. Say that some people are meant to build companies, and some people are meant to build families. He'd found out which one mattered more. The story could end there, with everything tied up neat, with everyone happy and healed. But life doesn't work that way. So instead, the story continues. Not as drama, not as crisis, just as life. Revi grows up strong and curious, becomes an engineer like his father, but with his mother's heart for people. Lyric becomes a teacher, finds her own love story, builds her own life. Kellen and Nalaya grow old together, fight sometimes, make up always, watch their grandchildren play in the garden Glenna started. The shop stays open for 30 years, becomes a landmark, the place where love stories start and healing happens. Odette softens with age, becomes the grandmother she should have been from the start, never quite forgives herself, but learns to be present anyway. And the poem Nalaya left on that hotel pillow 4 decades ago, Kellen had it framed, kept it in his office at home, looked at it every morning as a reminder of what he almost lost and what he chose to fight for. Sometimes the people we think are just a moment become the rest of our story. And sometimes a one-night spark writes a forever kind of light, not because it was easy, but because 2 people decided it was worth it, because they showed up, because roots remember, and love, real love, always finds a way to bloom. Comment, she rebuilt everything with roots and love. If this story touched your heart, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful love stories that prove second chances are real and family is what you build, not just what you're born into. Turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop a new story. Your support means everything, and your comments inspire others who need to hear that broken things can be made beautiful again. Share this with someone who needs to believe in love today. Share it with someone who's scared to try again. Share it with someone who's raising a child alone and needs to know They're not just surviving, they're building something incredible. Thank you for being part of this family. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing that some stories are worth the wait, the work, and the showing up. See you in the next story. Until then, keep blooming.